All right, everybody. Hope this was kind of our first day talking about cascading style sheets, aka CSS. Hopefully, this kind of helped give you the idea of what it is and how it integrates with websites. Basically, as talked about, CSS is kind of the visual representation or style of a website. This includes like colors and images, but eventually also includes things like layout, how many columns, where do things exist within a web page, which we'll talk about. Eventually, we'll even can get some interesting stuff like using it for animation and things like that. All right, I'm giving you guys two labs to work on. First is called Betty's Bakery. This is kind of another one of Mr. Hurwich's kind of follow along type labs. It goes over how to write basic CSS and apply it to a web page. This includes like writing CSS, selectors, applying typographical things like font size and color and things like that. It also goes through backgrounds, which we haven't talked about yet. We're going to talk about that in the next session. So it's a little, I mean, some of it is stuff we haven't covered yet, but we literally will in the next session. So, if you want to wait because you're worried you're not going to understand it or you want to get a little bit ahead, it's cool. Today is the 14th. This will be due not this Friday, but the Friday after next, which is the 25th. All right, now that we understand a little bit about CSS, we are going to, I'm going to give you guys kind of a more open-ended project. You guys are going to take your portfolio project that we've been working on, and we're going to add a little bit more HTML to it, and we're going to add CSS to it to make it a little bit more structured and a little bit more visually interesting. So, in the last section, you added images and hyperlinks and things like that. Now we're going to add in some container tags. So, not this class, but the last module, we talked about things like header, main, section, figure, footer, things like that, which give our web pages more better semantics, which is good, not just in general for structuring data, but also for like things like this is very helpful for screen readers and other devices so that they can understand what the data is essentially. So what you guys are going to do is you guys should have your banner slash logo in your web pages as asked for in part two. Obviously, to do this lab, you have to do part one and two before you can do this one really. Um, your banner should be inside of the header tag. Remember that the head and the header are two different things. The head tag is about data for the browser. The header is for data that goes at the top of your web page. Then for each of your sections, remember you had like a bio section and a resume section and a portfolio section and a social media section. I want you guys to split those into literal section tags. Remember, a section tag is something where like you can move it around in the order and it shouldn't really change anything. So if I were to like take the resume and put it over the biography or underneath the social media, it doesn't change really the structure of anything. You know what I mean? It's kind of like you can kind of plug and play with it a little bit. That's kind of what we do with section tags. Each of your images should be within a figure because it has a caption. I would say, to be honest, this is kind of the one area people really struggle. I think, like in my years of teaching this course, this is where people probably make the most mistakes. Let me just grab a blank page. It's not blank, but you know what I mean. So let's pretend I have an image. Let's say this is one of your images and you have a caption. I just want to go over this because this is, like I said, this is probably one of the things that people make the biggest mistake on. So a figure tag, it's called figure because it's really meant to be like for like charts and stuff like that. But in this case, it's like an image that's associated with a caption, meaning like they're grouped together. The caption by itself wouldn't make sense without the image, you know what I mean? So it's like we're trying to combine them together, essentially. Okay. So a figure holds one image. Sometimes I see people try to like do multiple images and captions. That's not the way that works. The other thing is when you do your caption, it goes inside of the figure. The figure, we have something called a fig caption, and the fig caption is a child of the figure. All right. So this would be for like one image, okay? And then if I wanted to do another image, let's pretend I have another image here. I would just repeat the process. Okay. So like I said, this is probably the one of the things in this particular lab that I notice people lose probably the most points on. All right. So each of your images in your portfolio should have a figure and a fig caption. These should all go inside of a section called main. There should be a footer that has the copyright and the year. So that's the HTML part of this project. You guys are also going to add CSS. Okay, I want you to make an external style sheet called style.css. I want you to connect it to your portfolio page using the link tag, like we've done before. And I want you to make at least 5 separate CSS rules. What is a CSS rule? A CSS rule looks like this. So if I were to do this, this is one rule. Even if I add more to it, like if I were to like say add font family, this is still considered one rule. So one selector property value. If I did another one, now I have 2 rules, something like that. Okay. Hopefully that makes sense. So I want you to have at least 5 rules. You should define the typography for at least 2 HTML tags, like a heading 1 or a heading 2 or a P tag or a fig caption. You should define the color. You guys should know how to do that at this point. You can use hexadecimal, or you can also use RGB values if you want to do that. And then other related typographical type stuff. This could be like font size, line height, letter spacing, text shadow, font style, font weight, things like that. These are just some references here if you want to look over them. Like I said, I don't need you to memorize any of this stuff. I know these days with AI, that's probably not going to happen anyway, but like, it's fine. You don't need to memorize like every little thing. You just need to know where to look for references when you're like, what is it again to make something bold? You know what I mean? And then, you know, once you understand the syntax, what you guys do, it's like, okay, oh, this is the property that makes something bold. This is the property that makes something italic, things like that. And the last thing is, I want you guys to have a background. We haven't talked about this yet. It's going to come up in the next lab or the next module that's on Wednesday. But this can be like this is going to be a background color, a background image, or a background gradient, which, like I said, I haven't talked about that yet, but we will. So don't worry about that. So this is due not this Friday, but the Friday after next. When you're done all of this, you are going to submit me the root folder that has your HTML file, your CSS file, and then any related files. That includes images or anything else that you need to make the page work. Okay? If you have any questions, feel free to email me. You can email me. Excuse me, I got a little bit of a sniffles here. At David Hurwitz at I can never say it, sfsu.edu. All right.